Let's see. Welcome everyone who just joined. Again, tonight's talk is going to be by Andrew Alpern on Emery Roth's architectural buildings on the Upper West Side. We'll be getting started in about 2 minutes. And then I'll repeat one last message about how our talk tonight's going to go. All right, welcome everyone. I think we're about to get started. Tonight's talk is again Andrew Alpern talking about Emery Roth's buildings on the Upper West Side. And we have a special announcement before we get started. Again, I will be moderating tonight's talk. So we'll be having the presentation, and any questions you have throughout, you can place either in the chat or in a questions and answer tab, and we'll be answering them after the presentations tonight. Jim Mackin, you want to take it away?
Yep. Thank you, Michael. And again, welcome everyone. This shows a commitment to really enjoying Upper West Side history in our neighborhood, which we call Bloomingdale. Historically, it was Bloomingdale. If you're interested in all that we do, and there's about 12 of us, Michael, myself, and maybe 10 or 11 others that just really revel in our neighborhood history. If you want to find out more about all that we do, presentations, neighborhood walks, future events and whatnot, just go to upperwestsidehistory.org. If you can't remember that, just Google Bloomingdale history, and you'll either get the department store, which has a wonderful history, or you'll get us. But you'll see some really good stuff. We had a recent presentation on the Firemen's Memorial on Riverside Drive in 100th Street by one of our members, Stephanie Azzarone, who's famously written Heaven on the Hudson about the history of Riverside Drive, and her latest book about fountains of New York City, which is just fabulous. And we have a presentation coming up on Thursday, November 13th, along the Hudson, walking Manhattan's western waterfront by author William J. Hennessy. So that should be pretty interesting. Our featured presentation this evening is, of course, Andrew Alpern's latest book that he'll talk about Emery Roth's New York apartment buildings. Before we do that, though, we're going to present our annual Jim Terrain Award. Let me tell you a little bit about that. The Terrain Award acknowledges the person or organization that honors the history of our Bloomingdale neighborhood. It's named after Jim Terrain, who ensured that the legacy of the old community with its very many talented and accomplished notables who enriched our neighborhood and our history would not be lost or forgotten. This old community, which we affectionately call it, is the African-American neighborhood that flourished on West 98th and 99th Street between Central Park West and Columbus Avenue. It was destroyed by urban renewal in 1955. So this year, the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group is very proud to present our annual Jim Terrain Award to Tom Fedoruk. Tom graduated from Columbia University and has since lived in our neighborhood. He has many interests, but architecture seems to be almost at the top of his list. In his retirement, he kept his mind fresh with various endeavors and auditing courses at Columbia. And I think for one of the courses, he produced his building's history. But better than that, he put it into a YouTube format. You could see the YouTube just by searching for 345 Riverside Drive. You will be most pleasantly surprised and entertained. Tom, the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group congratulates you. And I'll read the text of the Jim Terrain Award that we presented to you earlier today. This award goes to Tom Fedoruk in recognition of his exceptional research and the creation of a video documenting the history of his building, 345 Riverside Drive. The video is an exemplary model of how a building's story can be preserved and shared. It serves to inspire others to memorialize their buildings, and it serves as a testament to Tom and his invaluable contribution to the Bloomingdale community. Again, Tom, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the recognition and the kind words. Uh, the I'm as eager to hear Andrew Alpern as everyone else, so I'll just take a half a minute. I can take credit for the research, but the video would not be there if it weren't for my daughter Elizabeth. She made the slides. She recorded the thing and put it up on YouTube. What you'll see if you watch the video is actually a talk that I gave to the residents of my building on the occasion of the building's 70th anniversary. Uh, and the talk is based, as Jim said, on a paper that I wrote for a course in architectural history at the Spitzer School of Architecture. And it covers the history of the not only the building and its site, but it's also kind of a mini history of Bloomingdale. And I'll also add that the work of the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group was a very valuable resource for me as I did it. So I hope you'll all go take a look at it, and I'll turn it back to you with many thanks from Elizabeth and myself.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Elizabeth. And now our featured presentation this evening is Andrew Alpern. He's the nationally recognized expert on historic apartment houses in this city. He has many other expertise, I might add, but we don't have enough time to cover them all. He had honored our Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group just a short while back, featuring his previous book, Posh Portals, Elegant Entrances, and Ingratiating ingraces to apartments for the affluent in New York City. Now he will tell us about his latest book, Emery Roth's New York Apartment Buildings. Roth designed a number of apartment buildings in our neighborhood. And of course, he designed the El Dorado, the San Remo, the Beresford, which pretty much gave us the Central Park skyline. But let me tell you a few things about Andrew Alpern. He grew up on West 82nd Street on our Upper West Side. He's authored 12, not 11 books as we reported. He's authored 12 books, every one a gem. The strength of them is the detail and the spectacular photographs and all of the insights that only he could provide. He's a lawyer by trade, but an architectural historian by avocation. And if he's not the best in New York City, it's not clear who is. A few of us in the Bloomingdale Neighborhood Group have sat down with him and chatted in a little bit of length. And boy, there's nothing more exciting than that, to hear about all of his varied interests and the connections and notable people that he knew personally and his experiences. Let me just say the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group is honored to present our friend, a gentleman, a scholar, and a New York City treasure, Andrew Alpern.
Where are we? Here we are. Okay. Thank you very much for that overwhelming introduction. I'm embarrassed by it. I will acknowledge that I do like writing books, especially about my neighborhood of Manhattan and zeroing in on the Upper West Side, which I knew quite intimately because I was growing up not only on West 82nd Street, but all along the West Side, because of course I had friends who lived nearby up in Morningside Heights, all around the West Side. And out of that, I became very aware of Emery Roth's buildings. I had friends who lived in the Beresford, which was right around the corner from where we lived, and also the El Dorado and the San Remo, and in a whole lot of other Emery Roth buildings, as I discovered later. let's see if this will, there we are. This is Emery Roth. He was born in Hungary in 1871. He had a comfortable childhood growing up. His father ran an inn in the town where they lived, and he had the time to indulge in his specialty of making drawings. He was a very artistic young boy, put a pencil in his hand and a piece of paper, and he could draw anything that you asked him to draw, whether it was in existence or it existed only in his imagination. He was very, very skilled at this, and he grew up perfecting his drawing skill. All went very nicely for him until he was 12 years old, when his life fell apart. His father died, and his mother was left with a gaggle of little children. Emery was the oldest. She had no business sense and was unable to run the inn. She was in trouble. So someone decided that part of the way out of the trouble was to get rid of Emery. So they gave him a little bit of money. They bought him a ticket on a steamship and sent him off to America at the age of 13 alone.
Wow.
Quite something to dump onto a 13-year-old who's just lost his father. But on the boat, he met a man who said he was going to Chicago, and if this young boy would come to Chicago and look him up, he would get some work from him. And the man gave him his card with his name and address. Roth got to New York, got on a train to go to Chicago, and lost the card. So he showed up in Chicago, a 13-year-old boy with very little money in his pocket and no place to go, who also knew absolutely no English. Somehow or other, he kept body and soul together by finding menial work and slowly learning a little bit of English and getting enough knowledge so that he could earn enough money so he wouldn't have to be sleeping in doorways, but could actually rent a room with a bed. And when he reached that level, the job that he was taking at that point was sweeping out and doing errands for an architect. Well, very quickly, the architect discovered that this young teenager who was sweeping out his office had an amazing ability to draw. So he took the broom out of his hand, put a pencil in his hand, and sat him at a drafting board and taught him how to draft architectural drawings. Needless to say, Roth took to it very, very well. He learned how to design buildings and ended up quitting that architect's office and going to work for another architect who was able to give him better work and a higher salary. That, in turn, led to the job that really opened up architecture to Emery Roth. In 1893, there was a Chicago World's Fair, and the committee in charge of the architecture for the fair envisioned a huge lake flanked with magnificent, apparently white marble buildings of classical design. And they brought several architects to Chicago to design this World's Fair. One of those architects was a very well-known and successful New York architect, Richard Morris Hunt. Hunt had designed the base for the Statue of Liberty. He had designed a cutting-edge chateau for William Kissam Vanderbilt, grandson of Commodore Vanderbilt. It was an astounding building. He designed later the Metropolitan Museum of Art building on Fifth Avenue that we know. And he came to Chicago to design one of the buildings for the World's Fair. And Roth got himself a job as an architectural draftsman working for Hunt. Hunt designed a building which Roth drew up, and he submitted the building to the committee that was in charge of all the architecture. And notwithstanding the stature of Richard Morris Hunt, the committee rejected his design. Hunt came back to the office. The deadline for design drawings was the next day, and his design had been rejected. And he explained this to Roth and said, "What are we going to do?" And Roth proposed a completely different approach to the design of Hunt's building. He did a quick sketch, which Roth was very good at doing, that captured the essence of the design that he had in mind. And Hunt, regardless of what he thought of Roth's design, pretty much had no alternative but to say, okay, can you produce the drawings in time to submit them tomorrow? And Roth said, yes, as long as you'll stay through the night with me and help. So the two of them stayed through the night, submitted the drawings the next day, and needless to say, Roth's building with Hunt's name on it was accepted by the committee. That started him off, and he went to New York afterwards because Hunt, needless to say, said, "Come to New York when the fair closes and I'll give you a job." He did go to New York when the fair closed. Hunt did give him a job, but then Hunt died. Roth didn't seem to be too well about older men dying on him at critical moments in his life. But he, as he did when he was 12, he picked himself up from losing Hunt's job, and he went and got a job with Ogden Codman, who was best buddy with Edith Wharton, the writer. Together, they had written a best-selling book on the design of houses. And he did very nicely and learned more from Codman. But then he felt that perhaps he was ready to go off and try to be an architect on his own. He'd grown from being a teenager to being a young man. He knew how to dress properly. He'd learned English. So he thought he could go out and bring in some work. Well, in the meantime, while all of this was happening, there was a new building type that had been invented. In fact, it had been invented the year before Roth was born. And ironically, the man who invented it was Richard Morris Hunt. Hunt designed the first middle-class apartment house that New York ever saw. It was called the Stuyvesant. It was built on East 18th Street, number 142 East 18th Street, and it opened in the spring of 1870. It was, as you can see here, 5 stories high. There were studios for artists on the top floor, and the entrance in the middle led left and right to 2 separate stairways. It was a walk-up, and the 2 stairways led to 2 apartments on each floor. What made this building different from tenement houses was that for the first time, an apartment in a multiple dwelling could be had where the dining room was separate from the living room, and they were separate from the kitchen, which was removed from the living spaces. And on top of all of that, there was provision for a live-in servant. A tenement house, of course, was also 5 stories high. It also had a walk-up stair and no elevator, but there was 1 living room in which all the cooking was done, all the eating, and all the socializing. And all the rooms that were attached were just small bedrooms. So this was the first middle-class multiple dwelling. Architects in New York picked up on this, as did developers, and immediately they tried their hand at it with decidedly mixed results, as you can imagine. They started out trying it out, the concept out, on a standard 25 by 100-foot lot. There are still several buildings in New York, apartment houses from that period on 25-foot wide lots, but they don't work very well because only the rooms at the front and the back of the lot would be open to view and light and air, and the ones in between were minimal light and air only if there were some sort of a setback. They tried 50-foot, which was better, and even some apartment houses that were 100 by 100 were considerably better. Then in 1878, a building called the Albany opened on the west side of Broadway between 51st and 52nd Street, with stores all along Broadway and somewhat better apartments, but they were still small apartments with small rooms, and many of the rooms opened on to narrow air shafts. So along came Edward Clark, a developer, and his architect, Henry Janeway Hardenberg, and they said, we can do better. And on the west side of 7th Avenue, between 55th and 56th, they built the Van Corlear. As you can see, there are no stores. There is an entrance on the 56th Street end with a little bit of a porch. A comparable one, which you can't see, is at 55th Street. And in place of the air shafts, they designed the building in the form of a C, so that there was a large court in the back, and all the apartments opened either onto the street or onto this large, open, airy, light court. A decided improvement. And there was a ramp which went down from the street into the courtyard to allow delivery wagons to go down into the courtyard and unload their deliveries directly into an elevator at the back, which went up to the kitchens. And the residents and their guests entering either from 55th or 56th Streets would encounter a lobby, and each of those lobbies opened onto another elevator just for the residents and guests, and a staircase. This was light years ahead of what, until that point, had been the best apartment house over on Broadway. Well, needless to say, it filled up with rental tenants almost the day it opened, and Clark and Hardenberg recognized that their innovations were good. They decided to expand on them and double the size of the building. So they designed and built the Dakota at 72nd Street and Central Park West. The Dakota was, of course, built, opened in 1884. It was started in 1880. And it, too, was quite successful. During this time, of course, Roth had been slowly building up a very limited practice, but he was able to get clients. And one client approached him, Alfred Sachs, and said he liked this idea of apartment house design. He'd looked at what had been built, and he'd bought a piece of property 100 by 100 and asked Roth to design an apartment house for him. And as you can see here, the handsome apartment on the left has become the equally handsome apartment on the right. About the only thing that has changed about it is the nature of the stores and the location of the entrance. In typical fashion for a lot of buildings, where the retail is bringing in more income per square foot than the apartments are. The entrance and lobby sometimes is relocated to enable more square footage to be rented out. In the case of 250 West 82nd Street, it was turned into a co-op, and the building adjoining it on 82nd Street was also a co-op, and they were joined as a single co-op, and a new entrance was put in the space in between that had formerly been the service entrance. Roth continued to do small projects as they came along. The upper left is something called the Cafe Boulevard. It was designed for a fellow Hungarian Jewish immigrant who had bought two former private houses on First Avenue on the Lower East Side, and Roth converted them into a cafe and restaurant that doubtless served food that Hungarians and Russians and Austrians would find familiar in an atmosphere like the European coffee houses and restaurants that they had left. Below that is the Arverne Casino in Far Rockaway. That was a casino and restaurant right on the ocean that Roth designed for a fellow immigrant. And at the right was a building that a one-family house that he built for a man named Fleischmann. Fleischmann had developed Fleischmann's yeast, which is still available for sale, and he made a great deal of money. And he lived in the city, and he wanted to take his family up into the mountains for a summer holiday. He went up to Saratoga, a very nice mountain resort community with several large Victorian hotels, and he tried to rent rooms there, and they very politely turned him down. In no uncertain terms, his name and his appearance marked him as being Jewish, and Saratoga did not like the idea of Jews coming into their hotels, and they would not rent to Jews. Well, Mr. Fleischmann said, "I've got enough money. If you won't rent me a room, I'll buy a house." So he went looking for a house to buy, and no one would sell him a house. The entire town was anti-Semitic. At that point, he went out into the countryside, bought himself a couple of farms, and he built this house to Roth's design, and a couple of friends built houses that Roth also designed, and he built the necessary buildings and established his own town. And he gave it the name Fleischmann's New York, and you can go there. It's a stop on the railroad train. He had the last word, thankfully. Coming back to Manhattan, a man named Alfred Cohen in 1902, 3 years after he had built his first apartment house, and Alfred Cohen had a plot of land on the corner of 38th Street and 8th Avenue that is now a neighborhood filled with huge anonymous loft buildings. It's just south of the Port Authority bus terminal, and it's not the sort of neighborhood that you would have any particular reason to go strolling in. But Cohen decided he wanted a 3-story hotel. He would rent out the ground floor spaces as stores, and upstairs would be a hotel. Roth designed this building for him in a secessionist style. It was a bit like Art Nouveau, not like the French, but more like the Austrian and German de Stijl version, called secessionist. It's kind of hard to pinpoint, but typical for it is that series of terracotta heads on top of brick pilasters, and of course that magnificent pressed steel cornice in remarkably good condition. It's been painted so that it should look like copper, but in fact it's not copper, which would have been much more expensive. This small building as a holdout is an amazing survival of a building that is 120 years old. The apartment building, which Mr. Sachs called the Saxony, I guess he was sort of the Trump of his day, rented very quickly, and Mr. Sachs was very pleased with it. So he came back to Roth and asked him to design a much larger and grander apartment house that would be a residential apartment hotel at the corner of Broadway and 77th Street, which still exists, unfortunately, minus its dome on the corner turret. I am hoping that someday the owner of the Belclair will reconstruct that dome. This building was laid out with very large, comfortable apartments that lacked kitchens because for meals, they went downstairs, and originally where those stores are, there were dining rooms along with lounges and private meeting rooms, and there was a dry moat all around the building protecting it from the pedestrians, and the dry moat had a truly magnificent wrought iron railing in a sinewy Art Nouveau style that looked as if it had been picked up in Paris and relocated here. It was the sort of whiplash design that Hector Guimard was famous for in Paris. Unfortunately, it was sacrificed in the 1920s when the retail trade on Broadway called for the conversion of the ground floor. While the building was being constructed, a pair of young brothers walking by looked at it and liked what they saw. So they asked the workers who the architect was, and they were, of course, told. And a few days later, these two brothers showed up at Roth's office. The brothers were Alexander and Leo Bing. The Bing family is an old family of Sephardic Jews who left Spain in 1492 and moved to various countries in Europe and made a good deal of money. These two brothers came over here with some of that money and proceeded to buy up property to develop. They told Roth that they had a building, two buildings adjoining each other under construction, but they hadn't settled on what the facades of those buildings would look like. And they asked him if he would design just the facades. The floor plans had been set, the dimensions of the buildings had already been set, and the height of them, but they lacked facades. And Roth said, certainly, I'll design just the facade for you. And at the left are the two buildings that Roth designed for Alexander and Leo Bing. They are very different from the run-of-the-mill five-story apartment houses in that neighborhood. That neighborhood is the south side of 136th Street between Broadway and Riverside Drive. There are a lot of five-story apartment houses there, and they're rather ordinary. Some of them have very plain cornices, others somewhat elaborate cornices, but none as complex as the cornices on this building, and none with the sort of ornamentation one floor down from the cornice that these buildings have, and none of them have their fire escapes recessed the way this building does, and the one next to it, you can't see that they're fire escapes, but that dark vertical stripe in the middle of them is actually the same black painted fire escapes as on the building that's just behind the tree. Bing and Bing, as they called themselves, were quite happy with the way the buildings turned out. They rented very quickly. So they asked Roth if he would design 4 buildings from the ground up on the north side of 137th Street between Broadway and Riverside. And of course, he did. This is the one on the corner of Broadway, and in front of it is one of the original cast iron and glass kiosks that all the entrances to the Broadway IRT subway originally had. Now there's just an open staircase there, which is slippery in the winter when it is covered with ice and snow. These kiosks were wonderful. They rusted, and rather than repairing them and keeping them up, the city just tore them down. It's an amenity that was a great loss. This building is still there. Unfortunately, the cornice has been stripped and it looks rather damaged. But it works very, very well. There are two buildings on the side street, and then the fourth building is down at the corner of Riverside Drive and 137th Street. It's a very handsome building, very unusual for its time. It had an elevator in it. It has the requisite fire escapes, but he's downplayed them by recessing them. And then around on the side street, in place of the fire escapes, he's put in elaborate oriel windows that enlarge the living rooms behind them and add visual interest. And he did something very original on one line of apartments. Most apartments at that time were designed with long halls. You entered the apartment at one end of a narrow, long hall. You walked past the bedrooms, past the bathroom, past the kitchen, and finally you arrived at the dining room and the living room in the front of the apartment. Almost all apartments were designed that way. They did not work very well, but that was all there was. On one line of apartments, Roth designed it a different way. He put the entrance in the middle, enlarged it to form a foyer, which created a hub around which the rooms of the apartment were arrayed. You went in one direction to get to the public spaces, the dining room and the living room, the opposite direction to get to the private spaces, and in between, he put the service, the kitchen. This worked much better than all of the other earlier apartments. And from that point on, that was the way Roth planned his apartments. And that's one of the reasons why the apartments in all of Roth's buildings from then on, including the best of them, all of the apartments in the Beresford, in the San Remo, in the El Dorado, are all designed on that same principle. He continued building in 1910. He built this building called Halden Court, Haladin Court, on the corner of 153rd Street and Broadway. This was built in 1910 for a developer named Morris Levin. The entrance, which is shown as very dark because it was an open tunnel originally. You just went through this tunnel into the central courtyard, and where there was a fountain, you crossed the courtyard to get to the actual entrance to the apartment house. Now, of course, for security reasons, you can't go in directly. There's a set of locked doors and a buzzer system to get in, but that doesn't change the planning. It's a very large building, but it's very grandly designed. You look to the building to the left in the rendering, and that's the sort of conventional building you would have found in that neighborhood. And Roth comes in with this spectacular fortress-like building with pseudo towers at the corners, with a very elaborate parapet wall, and below the parapet wall, a very elaborate cornice. He's got ironwork balconies there. It's a very grand building. If you look at the detailing, this is the tower on the corner, very elaborate with terracotta work here, terracotta here, more down here, a great deal of detail and elegance to it. This is one of the supports, no doubt in terracotta. It's been painted with yellow buhl, and subsequently, this yellow buhl was the foundation for gold leafing. It's a little bit over the top for an apartment house, but very clearly the co-op owners of this building are very proud of their building. It's beautifully detailed, and they wanted to embellish it. He followed up also in 1910 with an even more elaborate building called the Bancroft. This is a very unusual building because it's very, very grand. You would expect this building to be at the end of a vista on a very wide boulevard or overlooking a river or a park. And yet it's on 121st Street between Morningside Drive down at the bottom of the hill and Amsterdam Avenue at the top of the hill. It's a narrow 60-foot wide street with Columbia University up at the top and the Morningside Park down at the bottom. There is absolutely no reason why you would go and walk on that street unless you were going to visit someone who lived on that street. Notwithstanding that, Roth designed this astoundingly elaborate building. It has a little bit of everything in it, every conceivable style, which you would expect in lesser hands to result in visual chaos. But here it hangs together beautifully. And in reality, it looks magnificent. At the right, needless to say, is a photograph that was taken when it was almost new, and it had a terracotta plaque at the top that said Bancroft Apartments, but of course, eventually another building was built right next door, so that's been covered over. But you can see from the current photograph, it's still in excellent condition. It's almost a little deceptive in the left hand. If you look at the right hand photograph, you see that there are two wings with the elaborate top. The right hand wing has only the corner of it evident here. And this is the central portion. This is more easily understood when you look at the entrance, the two wings, the central portion, but with this recessed entry courtyard. This is a very, very grand building, and almost no one knows it. Nobody has any reason to go there and see it. And it's a marvelous, marvelous building. I wish it could get more publicity. When he got further commissions, he quieted down considerably. This may have been his own decision, or more likely the suggestion of the developer. Here, the developer was Mr. Alfred Sachs again. This is his third building for Mr. Roth. And very clearly, he was coming along with a good deal of money to spend, because this building is entirely sheathed in limestone slabs, not a skinny veneer such as we use today, that's an inch thick, that is laminated to a precast concrete panel. These are solid limestone blocks, 6 or 7 inches thick, covering the entire building, classical looking, with rustication down at the ground floor, and these elaborate balconies at the 4th floor, and just down from the surprisingly simple parapet. There isn't an extended cornice. He elected to do a flat, high parapet. The actual roof line is right about here. And all of this is protecting the roof, but also obviating any views from the roof. At the time that this building was built, which was 1916, nice people didn't go up on the roof. The roof was where your servants brought your wet laundry to hang up to dry so that the sun would freshen it. And sometimes servants might have rooms on the roof, and occasionally the superintendent might have a penthouse apartment, but proper people lived in apartments downstairs. And in this case, one family to a floor, 11 rooms, very nicely laid out. That lasted until the 1930s, when the Depression hit, and large apartments like 11 rooms were drugs on the market. Nobody could rent them. So by World War II, this building was converted to use as a hotel. And then after the hotel went out of business, it was converted to a nursing home. And then finally, in 1978, a developer bought the building, cleaned out the insides, rebuilt it inside into 2 apartments to a floor, and converted it to a cooperative. Samuel Minskoff was a fellow immigrant, also Jewish. He didn't come from Hungary as Roth did. He came from somewhere within the Russian Tsarist Empire. He came over here, became a plumber, did very well as a plumber, so he started his own plumbing business, did well at that, converted it to a wholesale plumbing business, made a lot of money, hung up his tools and his pipes, and went into real estate development. Minskoff came to Roth with a plot of land on the corner of 82nd Street and Broadway, diagonally across the intersection from that first 1899 apartment house that Roth had designed. And in 1923, Roth built for Mr. Minskoff this very large, blocky apartment house with stores along Broadway. Minskoff named this building for his older son, Myron, who had been born in 1917. So he was a little boy of 6, and he had a building named for him. I'm not sure whether he knew that or cared, but this was the Myron Arms at the right. It filled up very quickly because Roth was an expert at laying out apartments, individual apartments, and in creating a hierarchy of apartments within a building so that the landlord would have a variety of apartment sizes to offer to would-be renters. As soon as this building was finished, Roth started on the sister building on the 83rd Street corner. And of course, Mr. Minskoff named that after the next son, Jerome, who had been born in 1915. Jerome's son is now running the Minskoff real estate company, which is still in existence and doing very, very nicely. With these two buildings working very well, they're very solidly designed. If you look up at the top, you'll see first, the penthouse structures are not just tacked on structures. Those are solid brick-walled apartments with a cornice and ornamentation that matches the cornice on the building itself. And then on top is a signature element of Roth buildings, a tower which hides the necessary wooden water tank that all apartment houses have to have up on the roof, and sometimes quite a bit above the roof if there's a penthouse, so that gravity can provide enough water pressure for even the penthouse. As I'm sure you all know, the water pressure in New York's water mains is sufficient to drive the water about 5 floors up, which is why so many tenement houses are 5 stories high. While the water pressure on the 5th floor isn't as good as it is on the 1st floor, at least you have water pressure. In order to have water pressure of any useful sort above that level, you have to have a wooden water tank. Emery Roth didn't like the way they looked on open steelwork frames, which was what was commonly done. So he liked to enclose them, as he did here. Minskoff bought some more property, another entire block on the west side of Amsterdam Avenue between 89th Street and 90th Street, not all that far away from those first two buildings. And in 1926, after he'd completed those two buildings, Roth designed these two even larger brick buildings um, uh, with very nice granite and limestone bases. But here he started using something that he very clearly liked. It was polychromed glazed terracotta, usually matte glazed. This is a clay substance that is carved. Initially, the model is carved in clay, and then a plaster mold is made from the original clay model. And then a different kind of clay is forced into the mold. It is put in a kiln and baked. And when it comes out, it is a solid piece of terracotta, which can then be painted in different colors using glazes. And then it gets a second firing to fix those glazes in colors, and you end up with a building unit that is usually designed so that one man can lift one of these units. So there's a lot of small units to go to make up a larger design. And it's built up with the brickwork tied into it. And it adds delicious decoration and embellishment to the buildings. And it has the advantage that when it gets dirty, all you need is soap and water, and it will be restored to its original splendor. Roth also designed smaller buildings on the side streets where he was only designing one facade, or on a corner where he'd have two, but it wasn't as grand. Um, uh, these three buildings that he designed, the one on the left is on the corner of 76th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. The one in the middle is 118 West 79th Street, which is between Columbus and Amsterdam. And also between Columbus and Amsterdam is 110 West 86th Street on the right. If you look at the 79th Street one, you'll see a typical way that he would decorate and embellish his buildings. Above the entrance, at the third, sometimes the fourth floor, he'd put terracotta embellishment, and then he'd repeat the theme one floor down or two floors down from the top. And up at the cornice, he had a straight cornice, and then in this case, he embellished it with a whole lot of terracotta ornament, acting as sort of like a classical consoles. On 86th Street, he reversed it. He put acroteria across the top. These are what showed up on Greek temples at the ends of the roof beams. But he did the same thing about putting a little ornamentation, in this case, just above the entrance, and then lots of ornament up at the top. Unfortunately, most people just don't look up. They just look at what's on the ground floor. Maybe they might look at what's at the second floor, but almost nobody looks all the way up. If, when you walk, you look up at buildings, you will find some very, very interesting embellishment, but you have to look for it. Over on Central Park West, Roth did two very large buildings. On the left is what was originally the Hotel Alden on the corner of 82nd Street and Central Park West. It was designed originally as a residential hotel, and it was converted a number of years ago to a pure apartment house. It still maintains its elaborate marquee entrance on Central Park West. This is the building that Roth and his wife downsized into after their children grew up and moved out of the 7-room penthouse that they had grown up in, that Roth designed on top of another building he built for Mr. Minskoff at 210 West 101st Street. It's a very large apartment house, and on the roof, he designed a penthouse, 7 rooms, specifically for himself, and he rented it from Minskoff. That apartment still exists, although all of the wonderful decorative embellishment inside the apartment has been removed or painted over. It's vacant at the moment, and you can rent it if you've got about $25,000, $28,000 a month to spend on it. At the right is 65 Central Park West, a very well-planned building that takes up almost the entire block between 66th and 67th Street. It stops short of an older studio building. It's symmetrical, and up at the top, you see divided into threes are the ornamentation that I'm suggesting you should look up and see. But around the entrance is where you'll find the ornamentation that most people look at and enjoy. On 81st Street, there's a very large building that has not terribly much ornamentation except around the entrance and up at the top. It's got the signature pavilion that he raised up on an intermediate level pavilion in order to get the water tower high enough so that the penthouses would have adequate water pressure. This is 15 West 81st Street, and it was built by Saul Ravitch of HRH Construction. Saul Ravitch's son, Richard Ravitch, was deputy mayor and held, not so long ago, and held various other posts in the city. Dick Ravitch did a lot of good for New York. Down on 72nd Street at number 12 West was another, or is another apartment hotel, the Oliver Cromwell. It has a tower because it was enabled to have a tower because it wasn't filed as an apartment house, but rather as an apartment hotel. And while apartment houses were limited in height, apartment hotels were deemed to be commercial buildings and could go much, much higher. The rub was that the apartments in the building couldn't have kitchens. So they just had little kitchenettes with no ovens because they weren't allowed to have cooking facilities. And there was a dining room on the ground floor. Well, this, of course, went by the wayside when people put in illegal kitchens, and eventually they changed the law, and the Oliver Cromwell was converted to a conventional apartment house in remarkably original condition, with the exception of the entrance. As you can see, it's a canvas awning. It's a rather elaborate one with a ceiling and lighting there, but it's still a canvas awning. If you look up here, right here, and over here, you'll see two lions' heads. And from their mouths, there used to be two very strong steel rods that extended out and supported an elaborate iron and glass marquee, very much like the one that still exists on the Hotel Alden. They removed that, decided that they wanted to have coverage all the way to the curb, and the marquee didn't do that. So the only way to get that was to replace the marquee with this entrance canopy. Now, if you look at the top of that tower of the Oliver Cromwell, and then compare that with the tops of the towers of the Beresford, you'll see a family resemblance. The Beresford on the corner of 81st Street and Central Park West is an exceptional building on a very exceptional site. It has two full facades opening each on an extra wide, 100-foot wide street. 81st and Central Park West are both extra wide. And on the other side of Central Park West, of course, is the expanse of Central Park. And on the other side of 81st Street is the expanse of Theodore Roosevelt Park and the Museum of Natural History and the planetarium, all of which are set back, so that there is an exceptional amount of light, air, and not only views from the Beresford, but views of the Beresford from very, very far away. In the rendering, you can just see the corner of the Hotel Alden with its tower for its water tank. Here is the Beresford as I remember it when I was a little child living right around the corner on 82nd Street. In the summer, there wasn't any air conditioning, so people who remained in their apartments during the summer had awnings over each window that they could let down and block the sun from cooking the apartment. And luckily, the photographer caught one of the buses that I remember vividly were the buses that I would take to school. And it also shows the traffic lights that were ubiquitous throughout the city, with just a red and a green. Orange did not show up at all. Here, the entrance to the Beresford is quite elaborate. All of this is carved limestone or terracotta. The rusticated base is limestone, and then you get this elaborate balustraded balcony, and all the way up to the fifth floor is the embellishment of the entrance. Here you have this grand cartouche with flanking cartouches, and engraved on it, it says erected 1929. It was very proudly erected. Everyone thought that everything would be beautiful until October came and the stock market crashed. And very quickly, the rental of the apartments stopped. The trickle of filling up the building with tenants, what had been a flow went down to a trickle, and then pretty much stopped. And the Beresford was in trouble until after the war, when things picked up. In even more trouble was the San Remo, which was a perfect example of bad timing and not being able to see where the economy was going. When the San Remo opened in 1930, it had trouble renting even its smallest apartments. It, along with the Beresford, went into foreclosure and didn't come back into financial stability until after World War II. But its entrances, and there are two of them, are even more elaborate than the Beresford and go all the way up to the fifth floor. You've got the elaborate bronze doors, and these doors with this elaborate decoration on them used to be on the Beresford as well. I remember them from when I was a child. But at some point, they decided to take them out and replace them with very simple bronze doors with lots more glass. Maybe they needed the view. Maybe they wanted to bring more light into the lobby. But they lost something when they got rid of these. The doors here have very nice broken pediment, but then you get another set of pilasters and a broken pediment and a huge cartouche, another balcony. Then you go up still higher with more ornamentation. This is another case of you need to stand back, maybe on the other side of Central Park West, and look 5 stories up and see the entire extent of his embellishment. And this is ×2, because there are 2 entrances to this 2-towered building. This was the first of the twin-towered apartment houses on Central Park West, which were an outgrowth of a new law that the San Remo was subject to. The Beresford was built under the Tenement House Law of 1903. A tenement, legally speaking, was any multiple dwelling, not just what we now consider as tenements. Any multiple dwelling, an apartment of any type, luxury or otherwise, was legally a tenement. And the Beresford was built in accordance with that law. The San Remo, on the other hand, was built in accordance with the Multiple Dwelling Act of 1929. That act changed the bulk that was allowable, and it had a provision that said if the developer has a site that is at least 30,000 square feet, on 25% of that site, he can build as tall as he would like. And that provision was used for the first iteration of the Majestic apartment, where Irwin Channon, the developer, and Jacques Delamar, his architect, in 1920, early in 1929, designed the Majestic apartment house that they planned on building as a single tower that went way, way up. It was a real skyscraper. But then when the Depression hit, that was scrapped. Roth came up with the idea of splitting the 25%. So each of these towers represents 12.5% of the site. And he created two towers. So he had more exposure for apartments. Irwin Channon saw what Roth had designed and thought that was a clever thing to do. So he did the same thing with the Majestic and later with the Century that he also designed. The twin tower idea and the double entrance idea actually came from the old Hotel San Remo, also an apartment hotel, a residential hotel. It had two rudimentary towers at the two corners, and it had two entrances. The floor plan I have here is of the first section. It's missing a piece at the south end, which they acquired later. So they were able to then duplicate this section at the north end, down at the south end of the building, and complete the entire block. So it was finally symmetrical. But if you look at these apartments, they're large. They're not very well laid out, and there are no kitchens because there was a dining room down on the ground floor. This image of the San Remo also shows the Beresford at the right. To the left of the Beresford, you can just barely see the top of 15 West 81st Street. And to the right of the Beresford, you can see the Hotel Alden. So this is very much of an Emery Roth image. Further up on Central Park West, this is 295, 295 Central Park West, which was built in 1931. when the Depression was already in full swing, by Louis Kleban. Um, and Roth, no doubt, was very gratified that he had this work to do because by 1931, an awful lot of architects were out of work and had no income whatsoever and were reduced to walking breadlines. Roth, by contrast, he was so good that the developers went to him, and he continued to have work at 295. He also had work at 320 Central Park West. Hyman Kaufman was the developer for this decidedly Art Deco building. It's a huge building. It replaced the Ardsley apartment house, which was hopelessly out of date. Its apartments were cramped and didn't have any modern facilities. The developer bought it and three buildings down the side street and resulted in this extremely long building. But that floor plan demonstrates Roth's skill because in addition to each individual apartment being very well laid out and very functional, there is a huge hierarchy of apartment sizes throughout that floor plan, so that Mr. Kaufman, when the building was finished, had a great variety of apartment layouts to offer would-be tenants, from small to large. But here, the largest apartment facing Central Park on the corner was only 3 bedrooms with only 1 maid's room. If this had been 1927 or 1928, there might have been 4 bedrooms, a library, 2 extra bathrooms, and 2 more maids' rooms. But the economy would no longer support that. So he changed his design. I believe Barbara Streisand lived in a triplex way up at the top for many years, but she's since moved out. That same year, 1931, saw the destruction of another outdated pair of buildings, the original El Dorado, separated as 2 words in the original. It was a large apartment house, and the property could be bought in one transaction. But the developer enlarged the plot so that he was able to get past the 30,000 square foot point so that he could have 2 towers. He bought several brownstones on the side streets, and Roth produced this very handsome, large entrance. But instead of going up with his embellishment, he went out. So that, in fact, there are 3 entrance doors. I think these 2 outer ones are always kept locked, and the center one is the functional one. But he only goes up 2 stories. But by going out, he creates a rather grand ceremonial entrance without having a lot of ornamentation. Roth designed a building that bulk-wise was the same as was built, but in a classical style that looked like a riff on the San Remo, but the developer evidently didn't like it. Roth laid out all of the floor plans and did the apartment layouts and did the bulk design, but the embellishment and the Art Deco design was from Margon and Holder, another architectural firm that was brought on board. The final, next to final, I should say, two-towered building was the Normandy at Riverside Drive between 86th and 87th Street. I say next to the last. He did another building on Fifth Avenue that has two rudimentary towers, but it isn't as anywhere near as grandiose as the Normandy is. This is a very small side street building at the left that Roth designed. It's 145 West 79th Street, between Columbus Avenue and Amsterdam Avenue. I know the building very well because that doctor's office right here was where my dentist was when I was a child, and I made many trips to there. And I always found this a very distinctive building. It's called Manchester House, and it's got a pseudo-English coat of arms here. And I thought it was distinctive and interesting. And only recently I discovered over on East 51st Street is a first cousin of this building. If you compare these two buildings, especially the entrance, but also the arched arcade and the detailing, the carvings, they look as if they ought to have been designed by the same architect, but they weren't. The one on the right was designed by Van Wart and Wien, along with Trenner and Fatio, and it was featured in a book that was published in 1925. It was the last book about apartment houses until 50 years later, I published my first book on apartment houses. And this building on East 51st Street showed up there. I know that Emery Roth had to have bought, at least looked at, if not bought, a copy of that book, because one of his buildings was also featured in that book, 310 West End Avenue, just a small photograph. This one had a couple of pages and was featured. With his own building in a book, and this would have been the first publication of any of his buildings, he would have bought a copy and been very proud to show it to his children. Here's one of my buildings. And in his spare time, no doubt he turned the pages and looked at what other people were doing. And he saw this building and he liked what it looked like. So he did the same thing on West 79th Street. It's a much smaller building. It's designed differently. But if you look at the details of how the window meets its lintel, and you look at how the window meets its lintel, and the little pieces of stone stuck into the brickwork, and the little pieces of stone, and the carvings. Whoops, sorry. The carvings over the entrances. These two details are the West Side building. These two details are the East Side building. And you can see that Roth, who designed this building after this building, copied it. Back then, there was no copyright protection for architectural drawings or architectural buildings. And just as musicians copied music from other musicians, architects were able to copy buildings. Architects also copied themselves. Here, you can see various ways that Roth elevated the wooden water towers all over town. This is 23rd Street, that's 81st Street, that's West 57th Street. In this one down on University Place, you can actually see the wooden water tower behind this open arcade. This one is on Fifth Avenue, Upper Fifth Avenue. This one on East 38th Street off Park Avenue has some lovely polychromed terracotta work way at the top. I wish they'd get up there with some soap and water and clean it. And this exceedingly tall one is on Gramercy Park, number 60. And here too, you can discern the wooden water tank behind the open arcade. Copying himself, the doors on the San Remo that used to be on the Beresford that still are at 15 West 81st Street, and over at 993 Fifth Avenue, which Roth also designed. It's hard to tell here, but these doors are identical bronze doors to these. The difference is that on Fifth Avenue, the co-op board decided they would only keep the little medallions in polished bronze, and they would antique the rest of it to make it more low key. But that's typical. If you look at the ornamentation on the building itself, this is much more low key than the elaborate ornamentation of the West Side, perhaps reflecting the alternate tastes of East Side WASPs versus West Side Jews. And Roth copied himself up in the Bronx at 888 Grand Concourse, an apartment house. This is what the entrance looked like. It's not in very good condition. The wonderful tessera mosaic tile work is screaming out to be scrubbed, but at least it's still there. He copied 2 years later the concept at 140 Riverside Drive. And then he used the same concept on West 20th Street, just making it segmented instead of semicircular. And finally, at 930 Fifth Avenue, he did exactly the same thing, even down to the lines on the top of the marquee that he had there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Can everyone hear me?
Well, I can certainly hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, Jim.
Wow. Boy, but did we get our money's worth tonight, thanks to you, Andrew Albert. And I could tell you from reading Andrew's latest book about all of Emery Roth's New York apartment buildings, there's much more detail. It's equally and more fascinating. This is the book. You can get $20 off the cost of this if you go to the site of the publisher, and that's Abbeville, ABBEVILLE.com. And Michael, I guess you'll coordinate for any inquiries, any questions we have at this point? Michael?
His image is not moving on mine.
Michael, are you frozen by any chance? This may just give people.
Yeah, he just
I saw.
went blank. He
Okay.
must be having a problem with his computer.
He might, yeah.
Let's see if he can come back, because of course I would be happy to entertain any questions and attempt to answer them if he's able to.
Yeah, we'll sit tight for a moment. But Andrew,
Yes.
this is just fabulous. Beyond the building detail, the generalizations that you make, the insights you give us, make it so incredibly interesting.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I've grown up with apartments. I've lived only in apartments, actually only in two my entire life, the 82nd Street one and the apartment that I live in now, which I've been in for 63 years now. And I like walking around the city and looking at them.
Oh, we see you again, Michael. Can you hear us?
Yes, sorry, apologies about that. My Zoom crashed there for a minute there.
Yeah.
All right. So did you guys start the Q&As?
We were asking, are there any questions that have been submitted?
Got it. I did not see any at the moment. There was a few that had been answered throughout. There might have been a few that I missed while I rejoined. The other thing I was gonna say is if anyone has anything that they want to ask directly, they can raise their hands. So I see one raised hand by Anita Altman here, and so I'm gonna let them ask their question. Go ahead, Anita.
You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. I have two, actually. One is, was Emery Roth ever certified as an architect?
Oh, yes, certainly. He couldn't have filed plans if he hadn't been.
Well, I wondered if he had to hire people to do that. So did he get academic training in addition to the very practical training that he got on the job?
No, he did not get academic training. For many, many years, I'm registered as an architect, as well as being an attorney. For 30 years, I practiced architecture, and many of the and I had academic degree in architecture, and then I took an exam and got my license. Many of the architects that I worked with did not have academic degrees, but they had worked for other architects for long periods of time, and met the requirements of variety of work that they had to have worked on. And then they
The
too
test,
were eligible
Mhm.
to take the exam.
right?
Uh,
Thank you.
I,
My
I,
other,
yeah.
the other question is, can you give us more details about 41 West 96th Street? I think there are a number of us who live at 41 who would love to hear what you might add to our knowledge of our
Well,
beloved building.
it's a mid-block building between Central Park West and
That it
Columbus
is.
Avenue on the north side of the street. It's very wide and tall. It has uh, some elaborate detailing up at the top, but it's clear to me that the original developer of the building had his eye firmly on the
The bottom.
balance sheet of the building, because he sacrificed the usual grand, spacious lobby
Mhm.
and created a very narrow lobby so that the ground floor professional offices could be bigger and net him more rental income.
Right.
It's an unusual building in that respect.
It's
Uh,
true. But it's a much beloved lobby, actually, that's been beautifully restored.
yes, I
And I,
understand that it's been beautifully restored and it has a plaque in
that's
it.
right. To
Uh,
Emery Roth and to the gentleman who was the first board president who oversaw the restoration of
yes,
that lobby.
Emery Roth's great granddaughter, who is a friend of mine,
Oh, good.
took a picture of that plaque and sent it to me in an email. It's
Praise.
very warmly done restoration of the lobby. I might note that the Manchester house on 79th Street, 145 West 79th Street, is almost complete with their restoration of their lobby. And they've done a very, very nice job of restoring it. Robin Roth and I were able jointly to dissuade them from painting the entire lobby white over the what appeared to be wood paneling, dark wood paneling. Once we stopped them from doing that, they started investigating, and much to my surprise, what I thought was wood paneling was in fact just plaster walls that had been trompe l'oeil painted, but they were very, very dark. And it had very, very dark carpet, and the lighting was perfectly dreadful. And they repainted the walls in a much lighter wood trompe l'oeil effect. And just yesterday, I got photographs of it, and it looks quite splendid. It would be nice if more co-op boards and rental landlords would restore the old lobbies instead of stripping them down and modernizing them. But that takes thought and money. And both of them are not always in as
High
lavish
priority.
supply.
Thank you very much for a really fascinating evening.
A pleasure.
The next comment I see here is, can you briefly mention anything about Steve Ruttenham's research, sorry, Ruttenbaum's research, and then I'll have another person to be able to ask their question.
Yes, I knew Steve Ruttenbaum when he was writing his book, Mansions in the Clouds. I gave him as much assistance as I could. I never met him in person. I contacted him. He initially contacted me by telephone, and I would send him letters. This was before email. And when he published his book, he sent me a copy with a very warm inscription in it. And then 2 years later, he died. And almost immediately, the book went out of print. It obviously had been printed in a very small printing. He left everything to his partner, and 2 years after that, the partner died. I did some research and discovered that the publisher had died. So when I decided that I wanted to include Steve's book as part of my book, I had the job of tracking down the copyright. And I had a genealogist friend of mine go looking for his parents, and it turned out they had died, but he tracked down a sister. And I was able to get permission from the sister to reprint it. So now my book includes Steve Ruttenbaum's book. Steve did an incredible research job in which the Roth firm cooperated fully. He had access to the unpublished memoirs of Emery Roth, which still exist. They're owned by Roth's grandson, who lives up in Connecticut. He was able to reproduce all sorts of photographs and original renderings in the book, and he then returned all of that material to the Roth office. And when the Roth firm downsized and then moved from one office to a smaller office, the material was all put into storage facilities, and then somehow the rent on the storage facilities never got paid, and all of that material was destroyed. So all of the renderings and photographs in Steve's part of the book are gone. What you see in the book now is all you'll ever be able to see of them. I had an excellent photographer go out and photograph every one of Roth's buildings, apartment houses, not the other buildings, that still existed. Roth designed a total of 175 apartment projects, which
Wow.
is absolutely astounding. It's more than Rosario Candela and James Carpenter designed combined, or almost as much as the combined. And of those 175, only 7 of the buildings that were built have been demolished, which is an amazing survival rate. And 29 of the projects were never built. Most of those were projects that were designed in 1929. when a whole raft of projects, architectural projects, never saw the light of day because the bottom fell out of the economy. But there were also a surprising number of projects that Roth designed for one developer, he filed drawings, but before the building could be built, the developer would sell the site to a different developer, take his profit and run, and the other developer would hire his own architect who would then build the actual building that was on the site, and Roth's building would not be built. So a surprising number of them were that. In one case, Roth and one of his sons designed 3 different buildings for the same site, and none of those 3 ever got built. A different architect for a different developer designed the building that in fact got built. This wonderful history of New York real estate buried in all of the research that I've done here.
Thank you. And just because we're running a little bit late on time, I'll have Carol ask her question as a final closeout here. Let's see.
My question is, I lived at 200 West 90th Street, and I get the impression that it was designed by Roth. I lived there from the time I was 3 years old until I was 21. Am I correct that he did that building? Because you mentioned it in your presentation. Thank you.
I thought you said 200 West 90th Street.
Yes, because you mentioned there were 2 buildings, and one was on 89th Street and one was on 90th. And I think you showed the slides, Andrew.
Yes, that's right. 200 West 90th Street was done in 1926.
Yeah.
It has the name Edna Court, and the building, the sister building on 89th Street is called Chester Court. I see that Chester Court has had its lobby redone. I haven't been in your old building, Edna Court, and I have not been able to track down who Chester and Edna were. My first instinct was maybe they were siblings of Myron and Jerome Minskoff, but from all of the research I've found, I couldn't find their names in the Minskoff genealogy. So I just don't know who they were.
Okay, but he did do the building.
Oh, goodness, yes.
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 Okay.
And that building has both of them together have the very elaborate multicolored terracotta ornamentation up at the top. They're very fine buildings. You were lucky to grow up in them.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. I appreciate your response. Bye.
A pleasure.
Yeah.
And to close us out, Andrew, where would we be able to find any future talks you might be doing, like if you plan on doing a lecture on Schwartz and Gross any time in the near future?
Oh dear. I have been waiting for somebody to raise the issue of Schwartz and Gross and say, since I've done the 3 top people, why don't I do Schwartz and Gross? The same problem that I had with Candela, Schwartz and Gross's office files, drawings, renderings, photographs have disappeared long ago. And without that material, it's very, very difficult to describe everything. somebody did an inventory on Schwartz and Gross buildings a long time ago, just the basics. And I had a photocopy of that research, and I think I donated it a long time ago to Avery Library. If I were to find another copy of that, it could form the basis for research, but it would be such a large job to do because Schwartz and Gross designed an awful lot of buildings in New York. Only a few of them were really good. 88 Central Park West, 1185 Park Avenue are two spectacularly good buildings, but tons and tons of very ordinary 9-story side street buildings, just like the one I grew up in, which was by Schwartz and Gross. So I've been very familiar with them as architects since I lived in that building. But it would be such a large job to do that I don't think I'm really prepared to do it. Maybe Henry Adams might be willing to do it. I know he likes Schwartz and Gross. Michael Henry Adams did a very fine book on Harlem, which is where he lives, and it's his great love. And I know he mentioned Schwartz and Gross to me once many years ago. He's much younger than I am, so maybe Michael Adams will do it. I don't think I'm up to it at this point.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, thank you. And I think maybe you're alluding to the fact that in Harlem, the two preeminent buildings, 405 Edgecombe and 555 Edgecombe, are Schwartz and Gross buildings. So, but Michael, I think we're ready to say goodnight to everyone. And Andrew Alpern, thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a spectacular presentation. We're so honored to have had you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. I'm very